The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. 3 in the morning, and I was still trying to resurrect my ancient Harley instead of sleeping next to my wife. But then again, Natalie wasn't exactly waiting for me upstairs either. Her laughter drifted down through the thin walls of our modest duplex, that artificial, performative giggle she reserved for her work calls. Except it was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and last I checked, the advertising world didn't operate on vampire hours. I wiped my hands on an old shop rag and crept closer to the stairs. Her voice carried clearly through the heating vents, along with the unmistakable sound of a speakerphone conversation. "God, Jason, you're terrible," she was saying, her voice thick with wine and something else I didn't want to identify. "What if Alex hears you?" "Real men don't mind if their girl has fun with her boss," came the reply. Jason Hartwell's voice was smooth, confident, and completely fucking familiar. "Besides, from what you've told me, your husband's more interested in that rusty bike than keeping his woman satisfied." I gripped the wrench so hard my knuckles went white. Jason Hartwell, the golden boy CEO of Hartwell Digital, the agency where my wife had been climbing the corporate ladder with what I was now realizing was more than just talent and hard work. "He's not that bad," Natalie said, but her tone suggested otherwise. "He's just predictable, safe. You know what I mean? Safe doesn't pay for penthouse suites or weekend trips to Chicago." Jason's voice oozed through the speaker. "Speaking of which, pack something nice for Friday. I've got meetings with the Morrison account, and I'll need my best creative director there to seal the deal." My wife of 6 years, giggled again. "Is that what we're calling it now? Sealing the deal?" Among other things. I stood there in my oil-stained coveralls, listening to my marriage dissolve in real time through a heating vent. The rational part of my brain told me to march upstairs and confront them both. The smarter part told me to gather evidence first. The smartest part of my brain, the part that had gotten me through a computer science degree and into a decent job at Midwest Tech Solutions, told me to play the long game. "Well, guess I'm just a prototype, not a real man," I muttered to myself, setting the wrench down carefully on my workbench. I spent the next hour in that garage, not working on the bike, but planning. By the time I heard Natalie's footsteps on the stairs above, I had the beginnings of a strategy. She appeared in the doorway, all tousled blonde hair and silk pajamas that cost more than my monthly motorcycle payment. "Alex, what are you doing down here so late?" "Couldn't sleep," I said, not looking up from the engine. "Thought I'd tinker with the Harley." She wrinkled her nose at the smell of motor oil and old metal. "You know, normal husbands would just take a sleeping pill. Good thing I'm not normal, I guess." Something in my tone made her pause, but she was too wine-drunk and guilt-addled to pursue it. "I'm going to bed. Try not to wake me when you come up." "Wouldn't dream of it." She hesitated for another moment, then disappeared back into the house. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the creak of our bedroom door, and then silence. I pulled out my phone and opened a notes app. At the top, I typed, "Evidence collection, day 1. The next morning, I woke up on the garage couch to the sound of Natalie's BMW pulling out of the driveway. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to work early. Dinner with the Morrison clients tonight. Don't wait up. N." I stared at that note for a long time, coffee growing cold in my hand. 6 years of marriage, and this is what we'd become. Polite strangers leaving each other corporate memos. My phone buzzed. Text from my buddy Mick. "Fight club tonight. You in?" Mick Rodriguez ran an underground boxing gym in the warehouse district. Nothing illegal, just a place where guys like me could work out their frustrations with gloves instead of lawyers. I'd been going there for about a year, ever since Natalie started her late nights at the office. "Yeah," I texted back. "I'm definitely in. I called in sick to work and spent the day doing reconnaissance." First stop, Natalie's iPad, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter in her rush to get to her early meeting. What I found there made my coffee taste like battery acid. screenshots of hotel receipts, the Morrison account meetings she'd mentioned. They'd been going on for 3 months, always at the same boutique hotel downtown, always charged to Jason's corporate card. Text message threads that would make a sailor blush. Photos that definitely weren't taken in any conference room I'd ever seen. But the worst part wasn't the evidence of the affair itself. It was the casual way they talked about me. "Alex is working late again," one of Natalie's messages read. "Sometimes I think he loves that computer more than me." "His loss is my gain," Jason had replied. "Real men know how to prioritize." There was that phrase again, real men. I screenshotted everything and uploaded it to a secure cloud drive. Then I put the iPad back exactly where I'd found it and went to work on phase 2 of my investigation. The Morrison Group was a real company. I'd checked, but according to their website, they were based in Detroit, not Chicago. And their latest press release mentioned signing with a different advertising agency entirely, one that definitely wasn't Hartwell Digital. So either Jason was lying to his own company about these business trips, or he was lying to my wife about the business trips being legitimate. Either way, someone was getting scammed, and I was pretty sure it wasn't just me. I spent the afternoon setting up surveillance. Nothing fancy, just a few strategically placed cameras around our house and a GPS tracker I'd ordered online. If Natalie was going to keep lying about her whereabouts, I wanted documentation. That evening, I drove to Mick's gym with my head clearer than it had been in months. I finally knew what I was dealing with. Now, I just had to figure out what to do about it. The gym was in full swing when I arrived. 20 guys in various stages of beating the hell out of heavy bags and each other. The smell of sweat and leather was oddly comforting after the suffocating politeness of my suburban home. "You look like you need to hit something," Mick said, tossing me a pair of gloves. "Bad day at the office?" "Something like that." He studied my face for a moment. Mick was ex-military, the kind of guy who could read people like instruction manuals. "Want to talk about it?" "Not yet, but soon." "Fair enough. Tommy's looking for a sparring partner if you're interested." Tommy was a construction worker with hands like sledgehammers and the patience of a saint. Perfect for what I needed. For the next hour, I let Tommy beat the frustration out of me. Every jab was Jason's smug voice. Every hook was Natalie's dismissive laughter. Every uppercut was 6 years of being taken for granted. By the time we finished, I was exhausted, bloody, and oddly at peace. "Feel better?" Tommy asked, pulling off his headgear. "Getting there." I drove home to find Natalie's car in the driveway and the lights on in our bedroom. For a moment, I considered going upstairs and pretending everything was normal, playing the part of the oblivious husband for another day, another week, another year. Instead, I went to the garage and fired up my laptop. Time to do some research on Mr. Jason Hartwell. What I found was interesting. Very interesting indeed. 3 weeks into my investigation, I'd compiled enough evidence to sink a battleship, and my marriage was circling the drain faster than water in a broken sink. Natalie had stopped pretending to care about my whereabouts. Her client dinners were now happening 3 nights a week, and she'd started leaving her wedding ring on the bathroom counter, because it gets in the way when I'm typing. Meanwhile, I'd become a ghost in my own house, invisible, ignored, and increasingly irrelevant to the woman who'd once promised to love me through sickness and health. Apparently, she'd forgotten about the part where we were supposed to be a team. The irony wasn't lost on me. While she was busy playing house with her boss, I was learning more about Jason Hartwell than his own mother probably knew. Turns out my wife's lover had quite the reputation around town. 3 previous harassment complaints at his company, all mysteriously settled out of court, a pattern of targeting married women in subordinate positions, and a cocaine habit that he funded through some creative accounting with his company's expense reports. But the most interesting discovery came from a private investigator I'd hired, a woman named Sandra Chen, who specialized in corporate fraud cases. "Your wife isn't his first married conquest," Sandra told me over coffee at a diner downtown. "There's a pattern here. He targets women with stable home lives, wines and dines them, gets them emotionally and financially dependent, then moves on to the next victim. Financially dependent? Sandra slid a folder across the table. He's been paying for her car lease, her credit cards, even some of her clothing purchases. Look at these Venmo transactions. I flipped through the documents, feeling sicker with each page. Hundreds of small payments, all disguised as business expenses or creative consulting fees. My wife had essentially been on Jason's payroll for months, and I'd been too blind to notice. The question is, Sandra continued, what do you want to do about it? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Text from Natalie. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. I showed Sandra the message. She glanced at her watch. It was barely noon. Let me guess, she said. She's probably already at the Marriott downtown, room 1247. They've been using it twice a week for the past month. I stared at her. How do you? I'm good at my job, Alex. The question is whether you want me to keep being good at it. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going home to wait for my wife's latest lie, I drove to the Marriott downtown. The hotel was one of those boutique places that catered to business travelers with more money than sense. All marble floors and overpriced cocktails. The kind of place where a software engineer from the suburbs stuck out like a sore thumb. I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked across the street and waited. At 3:30 p.m., Jason's silver Tesla pulled into the valet area. He emerged wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, all confidence and entitlement. 5 minutes later, Natalie's BMW appeared. Watching my wife step out of her car to meet another man was like taking a punch to the solar plexus. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something red and expensive that hugged her curves in all the right places. She'd done her hair differently too, and was that new jewelry? They didn't even try to be discreet. Jason's hand found the small of her back as they walked into the hotel together, and she leaned into him like she belonged there. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, watching the hotel entrance and fighting the urge to storm inside and make a scene. But that wasn't the plan. The plan required patience. At 5:45 p.m., they emerged separately. Jason first, then Natalie 10 minutes later. She looked satisfied and disheveled in a way that made my stomach turn. I followed her home, staying several cars back. She beat me to the house by 15 minutes, which gave her just enough time to shower and change into yoga pants and a t-shirt. By the time I walked through the front door, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop, looking for all the world like she'd been working from home all day. "Hey, honey," she said without looking up. "How was work?" "Productive," I said. "Very productive. How was your day?" "Oh, you know. Meetings, conference calls, the usual client stuff." She finally glanced up and I saw a flicker of something, guilt, fear, cross her face. "You look tired." "Just thinking about some things. Anything I can help with?" The question was so absurd I almost laughed. "No, I think I've got it handled." That night, she made dinner for the first time in weeks. Pasta with store-bought sauce, nothing fancy, but the gesture felt significant. Like she was trying to assuage her guilt with domestic normalcy. "I was thinking we should plan a vacation," she said over dinner. "Maybe somewhere tropical? We haven't had a real getaway in forever." "That sounds expensive." "Money isn't everything, Alex. Sometimes you have to invest in your relationship." I nearly choked on my wine. "Invest in our relationship?" "Yes, I know things have been distant lately. Maybe we just need some time away from work stress and daily routines." I studied her face, looking for any sign of sincerity. What I saw instead was calculation. She was planning something, and I was pretty sure it wasn't a romantic getaway. "Where were you thinking?" "Jason mentioned that the Bahamas are beautiful this time of year." And there it was. She couldn't even suggest a vacation destination without bringing up her lover. "Jason, huh?" You two talk about travel a lot? He's well-traveled. Always has good recommendations. She was trying to sound casual, but I could hear the defensiveness creeping into her voice. I bet he does. We finished dinner in uncomfortable silence. Natalie kept glancing at her phone, and I kept pretending not to notice. Around 9 o'clock, her phone buzzed with a text that made her face light up. I need to take this, she said, already heading for the stairs. Work emergency. I waited until I heard our bedroom door close, then pulled out my own phone and opened the app connected to the listening device I'd planted in our bedroom the week before. God, that was close, Natalie was saying. I think he's getting suspicious. About what? Jason's voice was clear through the phone speaker. You're being paranoid, babe. He asked about you today. About the vacation thing. So? I'm your boss. It's normal for us to talk. Not about personal stuff. Alex isn't stupid, Jason. He's quiet, but he notices things. There was a pause. Are you having second thoughts? No. No, it's not that. I need to be more careful. He's been acting weird lately. Weird how? I don't know. Distant. Like he's planning something. Another pause. Maybe it's time to speed things up. What do you mean? The divorce, Nat. We talked about this. You can't stay married to him forever. My blood turned to ice water. Divorce. They were planning my divorce. I know, but the timing is perfect. I've got the promotion locked up, which means more money, more security. You've got enough dirt on his emotional neglect to make this easy. Hell, you could probably claim he's been abusive. He's never laid a hand on me. Abuse isn't just physical, sweetheart. Emotional neglect, financial control, social isolation. There are lots of ways to make a man look bad in divorce court. I had to grip the kitchen counter to keep from throwing my phone across the room. They weren't just planning to end my marriage. They were planning to destroy my reputation in the process. I'll think about it, Natalie said finally. Don't think too long. Good opportunities don't wait forever. The call ended, and I heard Natalie's footsteps moving around upstairs. A few minutes later, she came back down wearing a concerned expression that would have fooled me completely a month ago. Everything okay? I asked. Client crisis. I might need to go in early tomorrow to handle it. On a Saturday? The advertising world doesn't take weekends off, honey. You know that. What I knew was that she was lying through her perfectly white teeth. What I also knew was that I was done being the oblivious husband. Natalie, I said carefully, are you happy? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What do you mean? I mean with us, with our marriage. Are you happy? She studied my face for a long moment. That's a complicated question, Alex. It really isn't. Things have been difficult lately. We're both busy with work. We don't spend much time together anymore. That's not what I asked. Another long pause. I don't know if I know how to be happy anymore. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in months, and it hit harder than any lie could have. Maybe we should talk about that, I said. Maybe we should. But not tonight. I'm exhausted. She kissed my cheek, a brief, perfunctory gesture, and headed upstairs. I heard our bedroom door close, then the sound of the shower running. I sat in that kitchen for another hour, staring at my phone and thinking about everything I'd learned. My wife was planning to divorce me, destroy my reputation, and take half of everything I'd worked for. Her lover was a predator who'd done this before and would probably do it again. And I was supposed to just sit there and take it like a good little victim. Fuck that. I pulled out my laptop and started typing. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them what a real game looked like. The next morning, I woke up to find Natalie already gone and a note on the kitchen counter. Client emergency. Will be late tonight. Order pizza. N. It was Saturday. Her client emergency was probably room service at the Marriott. I made coffee, fired up my laptop, and got to work. Phase 1 of my counterattack was simple: documentation. Over the next 6 hours, I compiled every piece of evidence I'd gathered into a comprehensive file. Bank records showing Jason's payments to Natalie, hotel receipts, text message screenshots, photos from the private investigator, even the audio recordings from our bedroom. Phase 2 was more creative. I'd spent my career in software development, which meant I understood how digital footprints worked. Every email, every social media post, every online transaction left traces that could be followed by someone who knew where to look. Jason Hartwell's digital footprint was a goldmine of incriminating evidence. His company email account, which I'd gained access to through some creative social engineering, contained 3 years' worth of inappropriate communications with female employees. His expense reports showed a pattern of fraudulent charges that would make the IRS very interested. And his browser history, well, let's just say his tastes in entertainment weren't the kind of thing a CEO wanted associated with his professional image. But the real jackpot was his social media accounts. Jason was one of those guys who documented every aspect of his life online. Expensive dinners, luxury vacations, business meetings, all of it posted to Instagram and Facebook with timestamps and location tags that created a detailed record of his activities, including his activities with my wife. I spent the afternoon creating anonymous accounts on various social media platforms and gossip websites. Nothing traceable back to me, but all designed to plant seeds of doubt about Jason's professional conduct and personal character. A few carefully worded posts on industry forums about unnamed executives using company funds for personal entertainment. Some anonymous tips to local business journalists about interesting patterns in certain advertising agencies' expense reports. A handful of reviews on hotel websites mentioning unprofessional behavior from certain corporate clients. None of it was illegal, all of it was true, and all of it was searchable by anyone who cared to look. By the time Natalie came home that evening, at nearly midnight, reeking of expensive cologne and looking thoroughly satisfied, I had laid the groundwork for Jason's professional destruction. "How was your client emergency?" I asked from the couch, where I'd been pretending to watch TV. "Exhausting," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm going straight to bed." "Did you eat?" "I ordered pizza like you suggested." "I grabbed something with the client." "Must have been a long dinner meeting." She paused halfway up the stairs. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just making conversation." But something in my tone must have tipped her off, because she came back down and sat on the edge of the coffee table, facing me. "Alex, is there something you want to say to me?" This was it. The moment of truth. I could confront her right now, lay all my cards on the table, and have the fight that would end our marriage. Or I could keep playing the long game. I chose option 3. "I've been thinking about what you said last night," I said. "About being happy." "Oh, I think you're right. We have been distant lately. Maybe we should do something about that." She looked confused. "Like what?" "Like that vacation you mentioned. The Bahamas sound nice." "Really? You'd want to do that?" "Why not? Life's short, right? Maybe it's time I stopped being so predictable." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, suspicion, maybe even disappointment. Like she'd been hoping I'd make this easy by being the boring, neglectful husband she'd painted me as. "That would be nice," she said finally. "Great. Why don't you have Jason help you plan it? Since he's so well-traveled and all." Now she definitely looked suspicious. "Alex, I'm going to bed," I said, standing up. "Big day tomorrow." "What's tomorrow?" "Sunday. Thought I'd spend some time with the guys. Maybe hit up Mick's gym, grab some beers afterward. You know, guy stuff." I left her sitting there looking confused and went upstairs, but instead of going to our bedroom, I went to the spare room I'd been using as a home office and locked the door. Time for phase 3. I opened my laptop and navigated to a secure messaging app I'd downloaded earlier. My contact list had exactly one entry: Sandra Chen, the private investigator. Package delivered, I typed. Ready for phase 3. Her response came back immediately. Confirmed. Timeline accelerated. Expect fireworks Monday morning. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Sunday morning, I woke up early and made breakfast for 2. Natalie came downstairs looking like she hadn't slept well, which gave me a petty sense of satisfaction. "You're up early," she said, eyeing the eggs and bacon I'd prepared. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd do something nice for my wife." She sat down across from me, still looking suspicious. "Alex, about last night." "What about it?" "You're acting strange." "Different." "Different how?" "I don't know. Like you're planning something." I almost laughed. "What would I be planning?" "I don't know. That's what worries me." We ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Natalie's phone buzzed with a text that made her frown. "Problem?" I asked. "Jason wants to meet this afternoon, some kind of urgent business." "On a Sunday?" "That's what I said." She was typing a response, her frown deepening. "He seems stressed about something." "Maybe he's having problems at work." She glanced up sharply. "What makes you say that?" "Just a guess. The advertising business is competitive, right? Lots of pressure." "Right." But she didn't sound convinced. After breakfast, I headed to Mick's gym as promised. But instead of working out, I found Mick in his office and told him everything. "Jesus Christ, Alex," he said when I finished. "Your wife's been playing you for months." "I know. And this Jason asshole is planning to destroy your reputation in the divorce." "I know that too." "So what's the plan?" I smiled. "The plan is to beat them at their own game." Mick leaned back in his chair. "I'm listening." "Tomorrow morning, Jason's going to wake up to find his professional life in ruins. By Tuesday, half the city will know about his pattern of harassment and fraud. By Wednesday, his company will be conducting an internal investigation that will end with his termination." "And your wife?" "My wife is going to discover that her meal ticket just got canceled, and that her husband isn't as stupid as she thought." Mick grinned. "You need any help with this?" "Actually, yes. I need witnesses." "For what?" "For the conversation I'm about to have with Jason Hartwell." That afternoon, while Natalie was at her urgent business meeting, I drove to Jason's penthouse apartment in the trendy part of downtown. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed, "I have more money than taste." I parked across the street and waited. At 4:30 p.m., Natalie's BMW pulled into the visitor parking area. She was wearing another new dress, this one black and clingy. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was going to a photo shoot, not a business meeting. Jason met her at the building entrance. Even from across the street, I could see the tension in his body language. Whatever was stressing him out, it was serious. They disappeared into the building together. I gave them 30 minutes, then made my move. The doorman was a bored-looking kid who barely glanced at the pizza delivery uniform I'd borrowed from a friend. "Delivery for Hartwell," I said, holding up an insulated bag. "Penthouse. Elevators on your right." Getting into the building was that easy. Getting into Jason's apartment required a bit more creativity, but I'd come prepared. The lock was electronic, but like most high-end security systems, it had a manual override for emergencies, and I'd spent enough time researching the building's blueprints to know exactly where the override panel was located. 3 minutes later, I was standing in Jason Hartwell's living room, listening to my wife's moans coming from the bedroom down the hall. I didn't go toward the bedroom. Instead, I sat down on his expensive leather couch and waited. 20 minutes later, Jason emerged wearing a bathrobe and a satisfied expression that vanished the moment he saw me. "What the fuck?" "Hello, Jason," I said calmly. "We need to talk." He looked toward the bedroom, then back at me. "How did you get in here?" That's not important. What's important is what happens next. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in the conversation you and my wife had last night about framing me for abuse in your divorce proceedings. His face went white. You're insane. Actually, I'm just well informed. I pulled out my phone and played a snippet of the recorded conversation. His own voice filled the room. Emotional neglect, financial control, social isolation. There are lots of ways to make a man look bad in divorce court. Jason sank into the chair across from me. What do you want? I want you to understand something. My wife thinks I'm predictable, boring, the kind of man who'll just roll over and take whatever you two dish out. I leaned forward. She's wrong. Alex? Natalie's voice called from the bedroom. Is everything okay out there? Everything's fine, honey, I called back. Jason and I are just having a chat. I heard her footsteps, then she appeared in the doorway wearing one of Jason's shirts and nothing else. When she saw me, her face went through about 6 different emotions in as many seconds. Alex! What are you doing here? Checking on my wife's client emergency, I said. Funny thing, this doesn't look like any business meeting I've ever been to. She looked at Jason, who was still staring at my phone like it might explode. Jason, what's going on? Your husband broke into my apartment. I didn't break in, I corrected. The door was unlocked. Very careless, considering what you two get up to in here. Natalie's face was cycling through emotions again. Shock, fear, anger, and something that might have been relief. How long have you known? Long enough? Alex, I can explain. No need. I heard your explanation last night. The part where you and Jason discussed framing me for abuse so you could take half my assets in the divorce? The color drained from her face. You were listening? I've been listening for weeks, Nat. Amazing what you can learn when you actually pay attention. Jason finally found his voice. You can't prove anything. I smiled. Actually, I can prove everything. Bank records, hotel receipts, text messages, recorded conversations, photographs. I've got enough evidence to bury you both. What do you want? Natalie asked quietly. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. And I want you both to know that the game you've been playing, it's over. I stood up and walked to the door. Oh, and Jason, you might want to check your email tomorrow morning. I think you're going to have a very interesting Monday. I left them there. Him in his bathrobe, her in his shirt, both of them looking like their world had just collapsed, because it had. Monday morning arrived like a sledgehammer to the face, at least for Jason Hartwell. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and monitoring various news feeds on my laptop, when my phone started buzzing with texts from Natalie. Alex, we need to talk. Please come home. This is insane. You're destroying innocent people. That last one made me laugh out loud. Innocent people. Right. I ignored the texts and focused on my laptop screen, where the fruits of my labor were beginning to bloom in spectacular fashion. The first story broke at 6:47 a.m. on a local business blog. Anonymous tips suggest financial irregularities at Hartwell Digital. Nothing too specific, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. The second story hit at 8:15 a.m. on a larger news site. Advertising executive under investigation for workplace harassment. This one had more details, thanks to the 3 former employees who'd suddenly found the courage to speak publicly about their experiences with Jason. By 9:30 a.m., #Hartwell scandal was trending on local Twitter, and Jason's company had released a statement saying they were taking these allegations very seriously and conducting a thorough internal review. By 10 a.m., Natalie was calling me every 5 minutes. I finally answered on the 7th call. Alex, you have to stop this, she said without preamble. Her voice was shaky, desperate. Jason's career is being destroyed. Funny how that works, I said. Actions have consequences. This isn't about Jason. This is about us, about our marriage. Our marriage ended the first time you fucked your boss, Nat. Everything since then has just been paperwork. She was quiet for a long moment. I never meant for it to happen. Which part? The affair, or getting caught? The affair. I never meant for it to happen. It just did. Bullshit. Affairs don't just happen. They're a series of choices. You chose to flirt with him. You chose to go to those hotels. You chose to lie to me for months. You chose to plan my destruction so you could run off with your sugar daddy. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I have the recordings, remember? Another long silence. What do you want from me, Alex? I want you to pack your things and get out of my house. Our house. My house. Check the deed. Check the mortgage payments. Check who's been paying for everything while you've been playing dress-up with your boss. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I can. Adultery is still grounds for divorce in this state, and I've got enough evidence to make sure you don't get a penny in the settlement. I could hear her crying now, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. Alex, please. Can't we work this out? Go to counseling or something? Counseling? I laughed. You want to go to counseling to work on our marriage while you're living with another man? I'm not living with him. Where did you sleep last night, Nat? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. Pack your things. You've got until tonight. I hung up and went back to monitoring the news feeds. The story was growing legs faster than I'd anticipated. By noon, 3 more women had come forward with harassment allegations against Jason. By 2 p.m., the State Attorney General's office had announced they were opening an investigation into financial irregularities at Hartwell Digital. At 3:30 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Alex Morrison? The voice was male, angry, and familiar. Speaking. This is Jason Hartwell. We need to talk. I don't think we do. You're destroying my life over a personal matter. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just shining a light on what was already there. Those harassment allegations are bullshit, and you know it. Actually, I don't know that. What I do know is that 3 different women felt comfortable enough to go public once someone gave them a platform. Makes you wonder how many others are out there, doesn't it? You son of a bitch. Careful, Jason. Threatening me won't help your legal situation. What do you want? Money? I can pay you to make this stop. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. See, that's where you're wrong. This is about respect. This is about consequences. This is about showing my wife that her real man is actually just a predator in an expensive suit. Your wife loves me. Your wife loves your money. There's a difference. You're wrong. Am I? Let's find out. Now that your company's frozen your assets pending the investigation and your reputation's in the toilet, let's see how much love is left. I hung up and immediately called Sandra Chen. How's our boy holding up? She asked. About like you'd expect. Angry, desperate, making threats. Good. Means the pressure's working. What about your wife? She's at his place, probably trying to figure out if she should stick with the sinking ship or start looking for a lifeboat. My money's on the lifeboat. Mine too. That evening, I came home to find Natalie's car in the south driveway and suitcases by the front door. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the table where we'd shared thousands of meals over 6 years of marriage. She looked older somehow, tired. The perfect makeup and designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a t-shirt I recognized from our early dating days. I packed my things, she said without looking up. I see that. Alex, I need you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. You said that already. I mean it. The affair, yes, but not destroying Jason's career. He's a good man. He's a predator who's been using his position to manipulate women for years. The only difference between you and his other victims is that you were married. She finally looked up. Is that really what you think? That I'm just another victim? I think you made choices. Bad choices. But I also think you were being manipulated by someone with a lot more experience at this game than you had. Then why are you destroying him? Because he was planning to destroy me. Because he's done this before and he'll do it again. Because men like Jason Hartwell only stop when someone makes them stop. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now you leave. You figure out what kind of person you want to be. You decide if you want to keep playing victim or start taking responsibility for your choices. And us? There is no us, Nat. There hasn't been for months. We've just been going through the motions. She stood up, smoothing down her jeans. For what it's worth, I did love you. I still do, in a way. Just not enough. No, not enough. She picked up her suitcases and headed for the door. At the threshold, she turned back. Will you ever forgive me? I don't know. But I'll never trust you again. She nodded like she'd expected that answer and walked out of my life. I watched through the window as she loaded her car and drove away. Then I poured myself a bourbon and sat down to wait for the final act. It didn't take long. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Jason's been arrested. Fraud charges. Thought you'd want to know. S. I raised my glass in a silent toast to Sandra Chen, then settled in to watch the late-night news coverage of Jason Hartwell's spectacular fall from grace. The reporter was standing outside the downtown police station, looking appropriately serious as she delivered the breaking news. Prominent, advertising executive Jason Hartwell was arrested this evening on charges of embezzlement and wire fraud. The charges stem from an ongoing investigation into financial irregularities at his company, Hartwell Digital. I turned off the TV and went upstairs to the bedroom I'd shared with my wife for 6 years. For the first time in months, I was going to sleep alone in my own bed. And for the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. 3 months later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Hartwell Digital CEO sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Good news? My lawyer asked, noticing my smile. Justice, I said. Just justice. The divorce had been surprisingly clean. Faced with the mountain of evidence I'd compiled, Natalie hadn't contested anything. She got her personal belongings and her car. I got everything else, the house, the savings, the retirement accounts, and most importantly, my self-respect. She'd moved back in with her parents after Jason's arrest, taken a job at a smaller agency, and according to mutual friends, was keeping a much lower profile these days. Word was she'd learned some hard lessons about the difference between love and manipulation. Jason, meanwhile, had discovered that federal prison was significantly less comfortable than his penthouse apartment. The fraud charges had stuck, along with 2 counts of sexual harassment that had emerged during the investigation. His company had collapsed, his assets had been seized, and his reputation was permanently destroyed. As for me, I was doing better than I'd ever imagined possible. The house felt bigger without the constant tension that had defined my marriage's final months. I'd renovated the garage into a proper workshop, finally got the Harley running, and started dating again, carefully, but with an optimism I hadn't felt in years. Work had improved too. The confidence I'd gained from handling the divorce situation had translated into professional success. I'd been promoted to senior project manager and was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. But the best part was simpler than all of that. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd thought, that I didn't have to be a victim, that sometimes the quiet guy in the corner is the most dangerous person in the room. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Natalie at a coffee shop downtown. She looked good, healthier, more genuine than she had in years. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her hair was shorter, her makeup minimal. "Alex," she said, seeming genuinely surprised to see me. "How are you?" "I'm well," I said. "You look good." Thanks. I feel different. Better, I think. That's good to hear. We stood there for an awkward moment, two people who'd once shared everything and now had nothing in common but history. Alex, I owe you an apology, she said finally. A real one. What I did to you, to our marriage, it was inexcusable. I was selfish and cruel, and I hurt someone who deserved so much better. I appreciate that. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did wrong, and that I'm working on being a better person. Are you happy? I asked. She considered the question seriously. I'm learning to be. It's harder than I thought it would be, being responsible for my own choices. But it's more honest. That's something. What about you? Are you happy? I thought about my renovated garage, my running motorcycle, the woman I'd been dating for the past month, a teacher named Rebecca who laughed at my jokes and didn't need expensive hotels to feel special. Yeah, I said. I think I am. We parted ways cordially, like acquaintances who'd once known each other well. No drama, no lingering resentment, no unfinished business. Just two people who'd learned hard lessons and were trying to do better. That evening, I was in my garage, working on a vintage Mustang I'd bought as a project car, when Mick stopped by with a 6-pack of beer. Heard you ran into the ex-wife today, he said, handing me a bottle. News travels fast in this town. How'd that go? Better than expected. She apologized, seemed genuine. You forgive her? I thought about that for a moment. I don't think forgiveness is the right word, but I'm not angry anymore. She made her choices, I made mine, and we both have to live with the consequences. And Jason? Jason's exactly where he belongs. Mick nodded approvingly. You know, when you first told me what was happening, I thought you were going to do something stupid. Get violent, maybe. A lot of guys would have. Violence was never going to solve the real problem. Which was? That I'd let myself become invisible in my own life. That I'd stopped fighting for what mattered to me. And now? I looked around my garage, my space filled with my projects, organized exactly the way I wanted it. Through the open door, I could see my house, my yard, my motorcycle in the driveway. Now I'm the last man standing. Mick raised his beer. To the last man standing. To the last man standing. We drank in comfortable silence, two friends who understood that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better. Later that night, after Mick had gone home, I sat on my front porch with another beer and thought about the past year. The betrayal, the investigation, the divorce, the rebuilding. All of it had led to this moment, sitting on my own porch, in my own house, master of my own destiny. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Dinner tomorrow? I'm cooking. I smiled and typed back, wouldn't miss it. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to the future. Not because I destroyed my enemies, though I had, but because I discovered who I really was underneath all the hurt and betrayal. I was Alex Morrison. I was stronger than I looked. I was smarter than people gave me credit for. And I was nobody's victim. I finished my beer, locked up the garage, and went inside my house. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged. They'd called me predictable, boring, not a real man. They'd planned to destroy my reputation, take my assets, and leave me with nothing. Instead, they'd given me the greatest gift possible. They'd shown me what I was truly capable of when pushed too far. And what I was capable of was more than any of them had ever imagined. I was the last man standing, and I was just getting started.